The Dragon's Creed is my proposed sequel to Dragon's Dogma, my all-time favorite video game since Resident Evil 5. I believe Resident Evil 5 came out in about 2009, and Dragon's Dogma came out in 2012. And if for 4 years going, that has been my all-time favorite game. It still is. No other game has taken that crown. Not even The Witcher 3, as amazing as that was. Dragon's Dogma gave us a rich fantasy setting with lush visuals and interesting monsters, areas, and battles. Narratively, the game was lacking, sure, which is one of the things I hope to fix with the Dragon's Creed. But customization, content, and gameplay, this was a badass experience that Capcom needs to follow up on soon. Hopefully they'll take some of these ideas into consideration, and hopefully you will as well. As you begin the game, there are the standard adjustments of sound and brightness and a few other options like on-screen waypoints and customization of the HUD. The game should be highly customizable in many ways, including many, if not all, aesthetic changes. Perhaps most important of the early game decisions is the difficulty. The player is tasked with selecting the difficulties of the game. Each harbors a different specific rule set. The first option shown to the player, and also the easiest, is Dogma Defender Mode. The game's rules resemble Dragon's Dogma. No consequences for death save visiting the rift, if not successfully revived on the spot by a pawn. Friendly fire is inactive. Monster strength does not scale based on placement within the world or the player's strength, but based on advancement within the story. Health and stamina are handled similar to Dragon's Dogma, including healing while in menus, and there will be fewer encounters with abominations. Then there's the Creed mode, the normal mode of the game. The game's rules are based on the new game, so the consequences of death always lead to the rift, and the player cannot be revived on the spot at the start of the game at least. Friendly fire is active for players and enemies alike. Attacks do less damage though, and they do not stagger friendlies as much. Enemy strength scales with placement in the world, and player strength, and advancement in the story. Health is handled in the new way of blocks and iron blocks, allowing for a total of 6 strong hits until the player is killed and sent to the rift. The reason for this change is to force the player to be more careful during battle. You also have more evasion tactics and more options to be able to actually block or deflect attacks. So you're expected to focus on using those instead of, taking so many hits. Encounters with abominations and shroud-infused enemies will be numerous and become the only bouts in the game toward the end. Healing can be accessed in menus, but must be done in real time. So Dogma Defender Mode is the mode of the game that is used for new players. If you're completely new to the experience, it's best to choose that. The Creed mode is for players who have played Dragon's Dogma before. Broken Bond is used for players who have at least played through once on the Dragon's Creed and are looking for more of a challenge. Death leads to the rift and loss of all equipment, which can be regained once the player makes it back to his or her pawns. If all pawns and player dies, then all equipment will be left on the map and must be found within a day or will be raided by thieves. Stolen equipment can be regained in a few instances, but consumables on the player may be lost forever. This includes key items that can be stolen, but of course they cannot be lost forever. Friendly fire is active and does just as much damage to friendlies as enemies. Enemy strength scales with player strength, placement in the world, and advancement in the story. Starting health is halved for enemies and player alike, and strong, well-telegraphed attacks will instantly knock down the player and require a revive within 5 seconds. Fast traveling is disabled permanently. Players receive double XP, crafting items, and, if applicable, money. Healing can be accessed in menus but must be done in real time. Players can receive mortal wounds that can only be healed over time by potions and herbs. Magical or physical debilitations are twice as likely to affect enemies and the players alike and last twice as long. Magic skills and regular skills take twice as long to charge but are twice as powerful. During the battle in the Round Hall against the Crustacean Abomination, when Barnaby throws his rifle to Bondbreaker, the player will be given a choice between 5 focuses which take the place of vocations in the Dragon's Creed. Here are the main weapons for the 5 focuses and a short description. The Rifleman. The Rifleman utilizes what's known as a hyper bolt action rifle, a weapon brought over from Melwar, since Melwar has a truce with Granzis that stems from the marriage of the Duke and his now missing wife. Some whisper that he's killed her in his demented senility, but they dare not speak out about that or suffer his wrath themselves. The Hyperbolt rifle is charged and infused with magic. It stops the rifle from ever becoming naturally jammed or degrading, but the rifle can be jammed with magic silencing and will take a magical element on that it comes near. What this means is if a fire spell hits the player, the rifle will temporarily gain fire damage capabilities on top of its usual damage. The Rifleman replaces the cartoonishly large Ranger's bow in Dragon's Dogma. This focus is skilled at powerful damage from a distance and has melee attacks that stagger enemies in order to allow it to escape from close encounters. The Hyperbolt rifle can be used with several different types of ammunition, such as explosive and piercing ammunition. These take the place of the Hyperbolt rifle's skills. So utilizing a Hyperbolt rifle skill will automatically come with one of these various types of ammunition. You can also switch them later on as you level up. The Warrior. The Warrior has the highest amount of options for weapons and can always switch to bare fists with metal bracers, but is damage challenged for skills. The Warrior replaces the Fighter class of Dragon's Dogma. The Warrior is the damage per second mainstay, and what it lacks in the ability to do damage, it makes up for in speed and versatility. Sword and Shield. The Warrior wields a sword and shield and has a good medium striking range with high damage per second chances. The shield allows the Warrior to block all attacks for as long as the Warrior's stamina holds. The shield can be imbued with magic to block or deflect magics. Single Sword Style. The single sword style allows for half the stamina usage of skills with the blade and faster striking. Player gains a longer evasion and the deflect window of attacks opens by 25%. Double Sword Style. Wielding 2 swords costs more stamina for blade attacks but causes more staggering. Player attacks animations take longer but are more powerful. The player excuse me, cannot block, so the evasion ability is even longer and more controllable. Bare Fists with metal bracers. The Warrior has even less range but gains many debilitating strikes that can paralyze or stagger enemies easily, even larger foes. Grabbing is the centerfold of this style and can be used to topple larger foes through sheer strength and technique. The Pikemen focus. The Pikeman replaces what was known as the Warrior in Dragon's Dogma. The Pikeman has the highest damage per second and always has higher defenses and cannot be staggered nearly as long or as much as other focuses. The Pikeman chooses from spears, pikes, and great blades. Almost all Pikeman animations are much longer than any other focus to balance the strength. With the absolute highest damage per second but the slowest movement, the Pikeman is used mainly to take down the largest and most aggressive enemies. Pikeman is especially strong against abominations and can toss smaller enemies into others without much effort at all. The Spear style has the longest reach and gives the Pikeman the most mobility of all focuses. The Pikeman can skewer and toss enemies from the spear or hold larger foes in place for a few seconds. The Pike style has the fastest attack speed for the Pikeman and has the best area of effect attacks. Pikemen can easily control groups of enemies around with this weapon by slashing and staggering them, combined with a few specific kick animations to push enemies to certain areas. Great Blades. This is the absolute strength and damage weapon in the game. Right? It's the slowest attack speed of all melee focuses, but does the most damage and always staggers opponents, including larger foes. Pikes and spears have been around Granzis for many years, but were not regularly used until the first Granzis invasionary force Hearthstone sent back a messenger and reported using them to great effect from across the sea. The fourth focus is the Sorcerer. The Sorcerer replaces itself and the Mage and uses staves and spell tomes. The Sorcerer is the irreplaceable magic user of the game. Magic normally takes twice as long in the Dragon's Creed than it did in Dragon's Dogma, so time and space is key to these abilities, but the range of effectiveness is also twice as long, meaning that enemy sorcerers could pose an intense threat from a great distance, hidden amongst the environment. Staves have the ability to project powerful magics like missiles, and offer all offensive spells. New magics have allowed sorcerers to project magic at the tip of the staff and use it to further their abilities in close combat. They can utilize any single sword skills they have against enemies then, but must realize the chance to stagger larger enemies is low and the magic blade does no physical damage, only the damage of the element they are projecting. Spell tomes. Spell tomes are used primarily to buff and debuff and have all the defensive spells in the game. Defensive spells can be used offensively in some cases. During the story talkthrough, for instance, Bondbreaker uses the telekinesis push to stagger the crustacean abomination. If he had a cliff nearby, he could have used it to great effect, but in many cases, so can his enemies.